Good evening, and it is nice to have you again with us. This is Better Life Convos 9, and this is a very interesting time. It's nice to welcome everybody in as you get into the webinar and settle down. As usual, we'll just go through a couple of just some information about Better Life, and then we start off immediately. As you know, Better Life is seeking to create I would say we're on that journey already, where we're creating a digital infrastructure or digital community of people who are interested in following a certain well-being journey. And that is as stated in our mission and in our vision. And essentially, we pursue 8 domains of wellness, which is more holistic than you would find. I mean, so we're concerned about intellectual well-being, environmental well-being, financial well-being, and physical well-being, and the other domains, as you can see in the 8 dimensions. I wouldn't want to delay our start with that information. I mean, this evening I have a very interesting panel that is taking off on this issue of gut health. With 2 of them, I have a very personal relationship. And I'll talk very briefly about that. And then with the third person, she's someone that I've just met, and I have a lot of interest in seeing her grow in the same space of well-being. I'll first talk about Olujimi Olivia. Olujimi and I went to primary school together, so I've known Olujimi for, I wouldn't want to reveal our ages, but I'm talking definitely over 40 years. Very interesting human being. She's very excited about organic consumption, particularly. But she's an accomplished actor. She's also an accomplished compere, and she'll be moderating this conversation this evening. Dr. Coker, who some call DJC. Dr. Coker is someone that I came by at a very, very interesting time of my life. Dr. Coker led the group of doctors that diagnosed my father with cancer, and he saw to my father's health until he passed on. And since then, I've just kept in touch with Dr. Coker, and we've met now and again, and I thought that he's just the best person to talk to this. Dr. Coker is an accomplished gastrointestinal consultant. Very interesting profile, and we are very honored to have Dr. Coker this evening. I just said to him that every minute of his time can be an issue of life and death. So I'm happy that he's here with us. We also have Adaeze. Adaeze is a clinical nutritionist, and Adaeze will be joining Olujimi Olivia in moderating this event, and she'll also anchor talking about, nutrition and how that can help us keep our gut well. So without much ado, I'll get out of the way and leave Olujimi Olivia. I'm not used to calling her Olujimi Olivia. I just know her as Yemi, but I'll get out of the way and leave Olujimi Olivia and Adaeze to navigate this conversation for the next 60 minutes roughly, and I'm sure that it will be interesting for all of us. Thank you very much. All right, Olujimi and Adaeze, take it off.
Good evening and welcome to this. I promise you it's going to be a very interesting webinar. At least this one, you will go away with something. And I know that everything that Better Life does, that you go away with something. So let me jump straight into it. Dr. Coker, thank you for spending the next just over an hour with us. And I'd like to go straight and start with what is gut health and why is it important to us?
Yeah, thank you very much. And everybody, welcome to this webinar. Gut health is very important because everything around the body, around one's being, actually anchors around the gut. Most people would know the gut. Now, what is the gut? The gut really is the digestive system. It starts from the mouth and ends in the anus. and it's connected through the gullet, or what we call the esophagus, into the stomach. The stomach serves as a reservoir, and it churns food. It processes the food and presents it to the small bowel. The small bowel is where the absorption takes place of important nutrients, and the nutrients go from one stage to the other. The food, what we call chyme, goes from one stage to the other where the absorption takes place. It then presents itself to the large bowel. The function of the large bowel is to absorb water. And that water absorption is also very important because it contributes to our ability to keep fluids in the body, what we call rehydration. So if we lose too much fluid, we can become dehydrated. So that's essentially the role of the gut in terms of the anatomy. But then most people would associate the gut with digestion, where we eat, the food is absorbed, and the waste matter is passed out. But it does a lot more than that. You would not believe that 70% of the immune system, immunity resides in the gut, because there are lymph nodes and other lymphoid follicles that are present around the gut that will process and deal with infection. So that's one thing. The other thing is that very, very important, we live in harmony with some bacteria, what we call microbiome. And this different types of bacteria, we have good bacteria, we have bad bacteria. And the good bacteria helps us to ensure that food is properly digested, food is properly processed, and ensures that whatever is bad for us is excreted. And so whenever there's an imbalance, when we have more of the bad microbiome than the good one, then we can also become quite unwell. And last but not the, well, also there is interaction between the gut and other organs. Some of you might have heard about the brain-gut axis, whereupon certain abnormalities or illnesses can affect not just the gut, but the brain. And the brain and the gut talk to each other. And there is a feedback loop through a nerve called the vagus nerve, which connects from the brain to the gut, that can then pass what we call signals to ensure that whether, affecting our mood, it also can affect, stress and our cognition. And finally, there is a barrier in the lining of the gut that ensures that the nasty bacteria or other viruses don't get into our bloodstream to cause illnesses. So certain afflictions of the gut can cause leakage of these bad bacteria or bad viruses into the blood system, and they can actually lead to death. So there are several roles that the gut plays, not just digestion. It provides integrity, protecting us from nasty infections. It also ensures that our immune system processes things well. And with the connection to the brain, it can affect other aspects of our life, including the mood, stress, and cognition. I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
I think you've answered quite a few questions all in one, and that's a really great way to start. So I would follow up with, are there particular things that we know? So for instance, if the gut isn't well, how do we know? Are there any signs to look out for?
Yes.
The reason why sorry to cut in, is I remember when we're doing the test run, you were saying that you had seen two people earlier in the week, one in their 50s, one in their 60s, who said they were in great health, et cetera, and one had stomach cancer and the other one had something else cancer. So how do we know, again, when our gut isn't well?
Okay, thank you very much. Great question. Signs that our gut isn't well would would include a change in the bowel habit. So either going too frequently, called diarrhea, or not going enough, constipation. So if we have any of those, then it's a signal to indicate that things may not be right. Particularly for the people who have diarrhea, particularly if they have to get up at night. So what we call nocturnal diarrhea is a sign that all is not well. There are also other features. Bloating, for example, may mean that there is accumulation of gas, or that the bad microbes are working overtime. Then poor immunity, people getting, frequent infections, getting fevers, inflammation of the bowels, excessive mucus secretion, all of that can also lead to, afflictions that can affect the bowel. Then there are chronic conditions and cancers that can also occur. And they usually, if you look at gastrointestinal cancers, for example, bleeding is one of the features of gastrointestinal cancer, whereupon either the bleeding is overt, and when we go to move our bowels, we pass through, blood is there. A lot of these patients, unfortunately, will be labeled as having jedi, piles, hemorrhoids, without seeking proper medical advice. And that is a significant risk, because I once wrote an article a few years ago called "The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing," which is rectal cancer, because it's a wolf in the sense that it is a nasty condition, but it presents like any other common condition that we all attribute to hemorrhoids. So a lot of people with rectal cancer may have simply presented with rectal bleeding, which has not been checked out. The other thing would be chronic loss of blood as a result of afflictions in the lining of the bowel due to cancer or even an ulcer. And that chronic loss of blood will then cause the blood to be low, which we call anemia. And the features of anemia will include tiredness, listlessness, loss of energy, poor motivation. All of those things may also indicate poor gut health. Thank you.
Adeze has a question for you, so I'm going to, Adeze, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Coker. Now that we understand the why we need to make the gut healthy, let's talk about what actually makes the gut healthy. Okay, so can you be able to explain to us what makes the gut healthy? So when somebody says, oh, I want to have a healthy gut, what are the things they should do to make sure that they have a healthy gut?
Thank you. The things that people should do to have a healthy gut will include what they eat. Remember, I spoke about the importance of the gut as a function of absorption. So high fiber. And this should be natural fiber, insoluble fiber, fruits, vegetables, anything that is green is good for you. Anything that is red or orange that is grown and brought up, not in a can, is good for you. Fermented foods, particularly yogurts. And we all know about the importance of certain yogurts that have in them, the word escapes me now, it'll come back, but certain types of yogurt have important bacteria that can also help, whole grains, nuts. So fruits, vegetables, whole grain, nuts, fibers, those are important things that we should eat. We need to discourage eating processed food. If you want to have meat, then white meat or lean meat is better than red meat. I know we all like our meat in Nigeria, but it's got to be done in moderation. Fish is preferable because it has a whole load of nutrients, including omega-3, and other important oils. Hydration is important. A lot of people do not drink enough water during the day and therefore become dehydrated or they become constipated. So how much is enough? Usually about a liter and a half to 2.5 liters. So I think 500, the bottle of Eva is 500 cc. So three bottles of 500 cc Eva or the other types of bottled water will be useful as a minimum. So drinking exercise is key. Regular exercise, whereupon, and the WHO recommends that we should have a minimum of 150 minutes of exercise in a week, which is 30 minutes in 5 days. So 30 minutes each day for 5 days. Just walking. It doesn't have to be anything rigorous. Just light aerobic exercises, walking, half an hour in a day is more than, it gets the bowels going. It gets everything moving. You can imagine if you look at a river that is flowing, the water is clean. Stagnant river, a stagnant pool of water can contain all sorts of impurities. So it's important to regularly exercise. Sleep is important because the sleep allows the brain to recover. So again, minimum of 6 to 7 hours a day would be sufficient. And then we need to avoid poisons. What do I mean by poisons? Excessive sugar, processed food, excessive alcohols, and most importantly, one of the problems we have in this country, which is the unregulated use of antibiotics. Because these antibiotics can cause harm in one of two ways. Either there is resistance to bacteria, so that when we really, really need the antibiotics, they're not going to work, or they can sterilize the gut and kill off the good bacteria. And then the bad bacteria takes over, and then we become ill from it. So those really will be the ways in which we need to ensure that we keep our gut healthy. Thank you.
May I quickly jump in and ask? So you've said that fish is a preferred, I know that protein in quote, but bearing in mind the pollution of our oceans and rivers, and then also those that say they have food allergies. So if you talk nuts, if you talk yogurt, there are people who tell you they're lactose intolerant, there are people who tell you they're allergic to nuts. What are there options for them, or does this come about because of their food intake at the moment?
Well, allergy is a completely different situation. Not allergies, for example, they need to be tested, and some may have acquired this from childhood, in which case they need to avoid eating nuts. So if there is allergy, then they need to look for alternatives, and there are alternatives to the types of food. What I said about fish is that it is a good alternative to red meat. And also, taking, chicken, white meat or lean meat will also be a good idea. The pollutions of the rivers is a problem, which currently I'm not sure that there is an appropriate solution to, apart from public health measures to ensure that we don't push all sorts of nasty things into the rivers.
Totally.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So how does one know? So if we experience or anyone experiences any of the symptoms that you had mentioned earlier, their first port of call would be to go to a doctor, so a general practitioner. Are there tests that the general practitioner will conduct that will now make them recommend a gut specialist? Or do they take those symptoms and come straight to a gut specialist?
Majority of people would have no problems. They will simply require advice on their lifestyle. Even as a specialist gastrointestinal surgeon myself, I still see a lot of people that all I do is I talk to them. I reassure them. I give them a pathway to improving their lifestyle. They often don't require, and they will have been told they need an operation. By the time they see me, I'll explain to them they don't need an operation. It's what is important. Medicine is simple. There are basic principles in medicine. The first is taking a history. We need to make sure that we get the story. Unfortunately, due to pressure of time, doctors, a number of doctors now do not spend enough time to take a good history from the patient, to try and understand what has happened and speak to the patient in a language the patient understands, not to be paternalistic, also to ask open questions. So it's better to say, how are you today? How do you feel? Is there a problem? Rather than yes or no questions. Do you have diarrhea? Do you have pain? So if the patient starts by talking and giving their own story, one is often able to elicit more important points and also understand what is hurting the patient's main problems. So taking a history is important, examination is important, and then doing the appropriate tests. But you see, those appropriate tests can only be done if a good history and examination has taken place. A lot of people now rely on just a buzzard of tests. They wouldn't have spoken to the patients, they wouldn't have examined the patient, then they start writing trillions of investigations. At the end of the day, the patient would have spent a fortune only to be told that there's nothing wrong with them. So there's that aspect of just basic good medicine, history, physical examination, which will then help to get the appropriate tests. The bit that really, that I'm very, very particular about are the so-called common things, hemorrhoids, irritable bowel syndrome, and ulcer. That's the biggest problem. Ulcer, ulcer. You have ulcer. I still saw somebody today with colon cancer who had been treated for ulcer for 3 years. So those tests, the way an ulcer is diagnosed is through examination of the stomach and the duodenum, called an endoscopy. So if one has a suspected ulcer, the patient may be treated empirically. And the majority of those who are labeled that simply have inflammation of the lining of their stomach or their duodenum as a result of a viral infection. So treating that with acid suppression or with antacids, they will usually get better. But if somebody comes this week, they have ulcer, then in 2 months' time, they come back, they have ulcer, then in 3 months' time, there's still an ulcer, no progress in spite of medication, then they need to have the appropriate tests done. And it is only after that that one can then say, yes, they have ulcer, because they may indeed not have ulcer. They may have other more serious conditions. So that's why it's important. The same thing with rectal bleeding. They go to the chemist or they see somebody in the market advertising and all sorts of things. And they get this and sit on their problems. And by the time we get to see them, the rectal cancer is advanced. One is not even able to operate. So such patients should usually see their general practitioner. If their symptoms persist, in spite of seeing the general practitioner, they should not just take it as given that it is piles because the general practitioner has said so. They must have a colonoscopy. A colonoscopy is a camera examination of the large bowel. And what that does is that it ensures that actually what the patient has are indeed hemorrhoids and not either rectal or colon cancers. Biopsies can then be taken and then the patient seen to. Thank you.
Adeza has a question, but just before she answers, when you mentioned ulcer, there are a lot
Yes.
that I know who say they have ulcer, and I've known them for years, and they say they have ulcer, and yet they're doing anything about it. So, for instance, they would go the whole day without eating, and then start complaining about tummy ache. I mean, so they've been, quote unquote, the solution, right, to help them get better. But they're not using that solution. So they're not getting any better. They're not doing anything. And that is not the doctor's fault. Because if you said something and you are not doing it, then you've lengthened your process as opposed to reducing it and relieving yourself. That. Adeze?
You're muted. You're muted, Adeze.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Dr. Coker. There are some common mistakes that a lot of people make that I would like to highlight and add some clinical insights to it. Okay, so for instance, we talked about overuse of antibiotics. Can you link it to the gut health and how it can the good bacteria in the system? Because I see a lot of people, once they have one small itch, one small headache, they buy fluoxetine, they go and get any kind of antibiotics they can see around them. So how can this contribute to poor gut health, or like how can it damage gut health?
Right. Okay. Thank you. The king of such damage is a condition that we call pseudomembranous enterocolitis, or C. diff, Clostridium difficile infection. And that often happens when people take antibiotics, even for the right reasons at times. Imagine if one is taking the antibiotics for the right reasons and still develops C. diff. Unlike those who really did not even need the antibiotics and develop C. diff, it's a severe form of diarrhea with extensive inflammation of the bowels, and people actually die from it. It can cause perforation of the bowel. It can cause the bowel to be markedly distended, and it can cause dehydration. It can put people into heart attacks. So there's so many things that can happen from just taking antibiotics unnecessarily. So it's important, because what the antibiotics do is that they sterilize the gut and they kill off the good bacteria, and then the bad bacteria takes over. And this happens consistently, or because majority of people who have a cold or sore throat or catarrh, it's a viral infection. They don't need to take antibiotics. But the first thing they will do is to use and I'm forever taking people off antibiotics and advising them not to take antibiotics. So it's the damage to the healthy bacteria, whereupon the bad bacteria take over, and that can then cause severe. And it could be subtle, like bloating, for example, or excessive diarrhea, or crampy abdominal pain. So those are some of the factors. And if it's prolonged, it can also cause what we call malabsorption, where people are not able to absorb the food they eat, and then they can also they develop malnutrition. So there are a lot of consequences to unregulated use of antibiotics, which unfortunately still prevails in our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coker. So that brings me to the second question. Okay, so most times some people suppress their natural urges, like gas, like when they feel like they want to fart, or when they feel like they want to poop. How can you connect this with the gut health? The entire body. I know that in one way or another, suppressing these natural urges can actually affect the gut health. Can you throw more clinical insight on this, sir?
Yeah, thank you. The ability to move one's bowels is dependent on quite a lot of factors. The need to actually suppress the bowel movement it's a natural thing, you know, because imagine if you are on the Third Mainland Bridge and there's a 2-hour traffic jam there. You have to suppress it. So it's a natural phenomenon to suppress, but it becomes unnatural when this is a habit. What then happens is that the stool gets stagnant, remains in the colon, they become constipated. The chronic constipation can then cause a whole host of things, including what we call diverticular disease. It can cause a buildup of the back bacteria. It can also cause people, when they now have to move their bowels, they strain, and then they develop all sorts of mechanical problems like hemorrhoids or what we call anal fissure, where there's a split in the back passage. It's one of the most painful conditions known to man. So there are all of those things that can happen simply because they have inappropriately. So yes, delaying until the time that is suitable is okay, but when it becomes a habit, then it can cause long life damage to one's gut health. Thank you.
Sorry, there's a question in the, and I think it's relating to this. So let me quickly ask it. So somebody has asked that they've heard that with acute constipation, if they raise their knees or their legs into like a stooping position, would it ease the constipation or the passing of waste matter?
No, well, okay. So you mean this is not to relieve now? This is in order to be able to move the bowels. Is that what you're saying? Yes, that's because what they are doing. You see, the shape of the rectum is curved. So going into a stooping position straightens the rectum such that there is now a direct passage down through. So we were actually made, you know, I think as Homo sapiens, we were actually made to stoop to move our bowels. It's only with technology that we started sitting down. So stooping just straightens the curvature and allows the bowels to move in an easier way. So there's a direct channel. That can also help to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so
go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that brings me to my final question before I get into the role of nutrition in gut health. So, sir, using antacids frequently without any root cause investigation, do you think that can also affect the gut health? When people use antacids, they have a heartburn, they run to the patent medicine store to go and get an antacid, and they just use it without prescription, without any diagnosis. Do you think this can really affect the gut health in the long run?
Yes, is the answer to that. And there is a danger to that also, in the sense that just imagine if it wasn't ulcer that they had, for which they've been taking antacids, then what that does is that it delays the ability to, you know, make the right diagnosis and treat the condition. There are different types of antacids, and for example, some contain aluminum hydroxide, some contain magnesium. So excessive intake of all of those may actually also affect the function of the body and can cause those ions to accumulate in the body, which, you know, on the long run can also cause significant danger. A lot of these are also alkaline because as they are meant to neutralize acid. So again, excessive use of that can also increase reduce the acidity of the stomach, which can then cause, you know, other problems. So it's important not to abuse those antacids. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coker. So still talking gut health. I mean, it's a huge, if you're looking at it in terms of, for lack of a better word, area, from the mouth all the way through those organs, all the way to the anus. Is it possible for any particular one of those tubes, for lack of a better word, to get infected without infecting the other one? So for instance, the esophagus or the mouth. and it doesn't affect the anus, or it doesn't affect the small bowel or the large bowel?
Oh, yes. There are different segments, and it's interesting that there are gatekeepers. So there's a gatekeeper between the esophagus and the stomach. It's called the lower esophageal sphincter. And when that is weak, people can have problems with what we call acid reflux. So that gatekeeper is there. And then there's another gatekeeper between the small bowel and the large bowel that ensures that, this stuff from the large bowel doesn't wash into the small bowel. So that way, the good Lord had already provisioned for such problems by putting in natural gatekeepers.
So what weakens these gatekeepers? Is it still the food that we eat? Or is it like maybe the bad bacteria taking over the good bacteria?
A number of things weaken the gatekeepers. For reflux, for example, the biggest problem is lifestyle, obesity, because there's so much pressure. Because you see, people who are overweight or obese on the outside, you can imagine what it is like on the inside. And there's quite a lot of accumulation of fat, which increases the pressure within the abdomen and pushes against this, gatekeeper. Smoking will also affect the sphincter. So mainly lifestyle is what affects that more than what we eat, really. But then, there's a correlation between our lifestyle and what we eat.
I think that's something that people struggle with. They don't believe that their lifestyle affects their health or their well-being. So when you're talking to them about that, it's like there's a block. And they're like, no, my lifestyle has nothing to do with how my body is acting. And that's a big thing. We're going to take a short break, Dr. Coker. We have a poll that we want our participants to take. So they're going to launch that poll now. It's on lifestyle. It shouldn't take more than 3 to 4 minutes, I'm guessing. Ayodeji. So the poll has been launched. So as you see the poll, please tick. It's a multiple choice question, lifestyle poll. Which of these habits affects digestion the most? So the answers are there, or the options are there. Please tick them, and then once that is done, we can move on. Even though I see the poll, I don't think I can participate.
It says panelists cannot participate in the poll.
Oh God, I did not read that, Dr. Coker. I just saw the lifestyle poll. Thank you. So we're waiting on our participants to please go ahead. Why can't panelists participate? We're here now, eh? Go ahead and take, and of course you can take more than one question. One answer, I beg your pardon. Ayodeji, when do we know when the poll is done and when the results are in?
I think Insikak will help us with the outcomes. Insikak, do we have the outcomes?
Okay, yes, they are. I'm sure. Can everybody see it?
Yes, I can see it. Yes, I can see it. Okay. Yes.
So the results of the lifestyle poll, which of these habits affect your digestion the most? Option 1 was eating late at night, and we have 63% answers on that. Skipping meals, 22%. Stress, 48%. Lack of physical activity, 33%. So Dr. Coker, do all these options affect our gut?
Yes, when I looked at this, I had thought to myself, were they meant to pick as many choices, or did they have to pick one choice? Well, I think we said they could pick multiple choices, couldn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, they all do affect digestion in different ways, though. Eating late at night is probably one of the biggest no-nos, particularly if one is eating within 2 hours of going to sleep, going to bed. That's because there isn't enough time for the food to digest. The stomach is probably still full, and one is now lying down. And remember that gatekeeper I spoke about between the esophagus and the stomach. So if one is sleeping with a full stomach, then there is a lot of pressure which can make reflux worse. So people who have what we call gastrointestinal and gastroesophageal reflux, as a result of weakness of the valves, then it affects that badly. It also contributes to obesity because there isn't any energy expended after eating and all of the food just settles. Skipping meals, it can affect digestion, but it's not such a serious problem. What that can do at times is that if one is prone to, say, for example, indigestion, or if one has problems with inflammation of the stomach or ulceration of the stomach, then skipping meals is not a good idea because then the acid is just working unabated. Stress can affect, because that affects our mood. It can also affect what we eat or how we eat what we're eating. There's certain hormones that are stress related. For example, cortisol or adrenaline that can also slow down and affect digestion. And of course, I had mentioned earlier the importance of physical activity in digestion. So in a way, each of those, but if I think, eating late at night is probably the most important of this in sense of affecting the digestion. And so I think our audience, they appear quite knowledgeable because majority of them chose that. Thank you.
So I'm going to speak a bit about eating late at night. So I'm going to hold this on my grandfather, who is no more, but hey, he always used to say that don't go to bed on an empty stomach, right? Or if you're hungry, make sure that you eat, right? So, I mean, I personally can eat about 12 midnight and go straight to sleep. But then again, let me say that I have a really high metabolic rate, right? And I think you've spoken to that earlier on about knowing how your body works, how important that is for you as a person. And then also when you're relaying information to a doctor, you've got to be able to state the things that work for you. So may I ask you to please speak to the importance of knowing how your body works, especially in relation, I beg your pardon, to gut health, because we more or less the first point of contact before we come and relay that information to a doctor. How much information, how much should we know, and how much information should we give a doctor to help us with our gut health?
Thank you very much. I think it's important that one knows one's body. The most important really will be your bowel habits. How regularly do you move your bowels? Is it once a day? Is it every other day? Is it twice a day? And there are also certain triggers that would affect bowel movement. So for example, certain people, if they eat beans or if they eat certain types of vegetables, they will go frequently. So imagine if one is eating that 2 or 3 days in a row and not realizing that type of food affects one's gut, then one would think, oh, I'm in serious trouble here. I have diarrhea. Certain types of food also constipate people. So the lifestyle that will affect one's digestion, it's better one understands this. I'll tell you a story. For a long time, I used to have headaches. Now, I did my surgical training in England, and I went to the GP. The GP didn't have a clue. I went to see a specialist, and I was convinced I had a brain tumor. So they did a CT scan and all of that. I couldn't find anything. And I had been through medical school. I'd been through specialists, gastrointestinal surgical training. Nobody told me about gut-brain axis at the time. And it was only within the last 15 years that I realized that if I'm constipated, I get a headache. And so now it's like premonition for me. So if I get a headache, I know that I probably, and then I'll think back and say, oh yes, I haven't moved my bowels. And once I move my bowels, the headache goes away. Now, if a patient came to tell me that 15 years ago, I'll say, get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. So it's important that one knows one's body, because what we do, what we eat can affect, and so that way one would be able to help the doctor. I mean, in women, for example, with women, for example, the menstrual cycle, the hormones relating to the menstrual cycle can cause either water retention, so that some people may either get diarrhea or constipation or pain that they really don't understand and would not have attributed to, part of the menstrual cycle. So there are so many things that can do that, and we need to understand our body so that we can help the doctors also work better. Thank you.
Just before Adeze asks her question, I also want to talk about moving bowels, because I've noticed that with men, they eat and they go to the loo almost immediately. This I noticed with my dad. I also noticed it with my husband, and I noticed it with when I'm around a few men. So once they've eaten, the next thing they're looking for is a toilet. So I don't know whether that is because that's how they are made, because I know that for me personally, I go to the loo in the morning when I wake up. And sometimes it's once, sometimes it's twice. If I go to the loo again, it means that I've overeaten. Is there a general rule along how many times one should go to the loo that is good for the gut? Or it all depends on the individual?
Okay, thank you very much. So there's something called the gastrocolic reflex. And again, remember, it's got to do with the nervous system and the way it controls the gut through the vagus nerve. So in some people, they have what we call exaggerated gastrocolic reflex. What do I mean by that? If they put something in their stomach, now there's something called colonic transit time. Transit time is the time it takes when you swallow food and when it comes out through the stool as waste. And that varies from around 12 to about 36 hours. So majority of people, they fall into that range. But there are other people where if they take the food, it stimulates their gut, the large bowel, to start moving. We call it peristalsis, the movement of the large bowel. And for those people, anytime they eat, then they feel like they want to go and move their bowels, but they're actually not passing what they've just eaten. They're passing what was already there, but the stomach has sent, messages to the colon to work. So that is called an exaggerated gastrocolic reflex, and that's what those people have. It can happen in women too. I think it's a coincidence that all the people who have it are men, but it can happen in women too. And I do see that in my practice every now and again.
Thank you, sir. Adeze has a question for you.
Thank you very much, sir. We've really learned a lot so far. So I have this question from the Q&A. It said, what is the way to clean the blood to ensure removal of the materials that block our blood vessels as related to the gut health?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Clean what? Clean the blood?
Yeah, so this person wants to know the ways to clean the blood to ensure removal of maybe those materials that block the blood vessels. Sometimes people feel like they have a toxic buildup in their gut health and they want to find a way to detoxify and clean up their gut health. I think that's where the question is coming from. That's the direction.
Okay, because what causes blockage in the blood vessels is usually excessive cholesterol, where plaques develop. That's what will cause blockage to the blood. I know about this concept of cleaning the blood, but I'm not aware of the scientific basis for it. But I know that it's practice where people receive infusions and a whole host of amino acids are given, and you know, and they swear by it that they've gotten a lot, they feel a lot better. There are one or two people that I know who tell me they go to this place and they have their blood cleaned and they feel great, and they go back again 3 or 4 months later to have the same thing. So the scientific basis of that, I'm not so sure, I must confess. So I'll have to pass on cleaning of the blood because I know it's done, but I'm not sure of the scientific basis behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adeze. Let me also ask this question. So somebody's asking about metabolism, that
Yes.
one's metabolism slow down with age.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to know if that is possible.
Yes, it is, and that's because the main engine that drives metabolism is the thyroid gland. And the thyroid gland produces thyroid hormones. There are two types of thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, and they would normally drive all the major activities of the body. And any affliction of the thyroid gland, making it to produce less or to produce inactive thyroid hormones, will reduce the metabolism. As we grow older, again, what happens is that the thyroid gland is not as effective and as active as it would have been when we were younger. In a way, that can also reduce our metabolism. But age itself, because of the fact that our bodies, some of the neurons are not working as effectively as they would have when we were younger, can also slow one's metabolism down. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Adeze has a question for you.
Okay, so I'm going to be taking the next question. So somebody's asking, what are the signs and symptoms of an unhealthy gut?
I think I addressed that earlier.
Answer that, no. So there's one about gut health and perimenopause and menopause. Is there a correlation?
There is. So remember, again, the hormones affect the gut. Again, we're talking about this axis. And I did mention, remember I mentioned about some women during their menstrual cycle, they may develop either pain, diarrhea, or constipation. It's the same thing with menopause. Because of the reduction in the circulating female hormones, then what can happen is that they may either develop diarrhea or constipation, depending on the body's response to the reduction in the level of the hormones. Apart from, excessive sweating, hot sweats, and a whole host of other things that come on with menopause.
All right, sir. Somebody also has a question for you, that what's the most exciting or promising research or new thing that you have found in gut health?
I think for me, in the last, because I do quite a lot of work with cancers. So currently, using genomics, we're looking at being able to diagnose cancers early by picking up circulating blood cells, circulating cancer cells in the blood, long before they cause problems. There have been 2 or 3 studies that have shown that this is possible. And should we Currently, there are still animal experiments, but should we then be able to pick up circulating cancer cells long before they become troublesome? I think that's going to significantly change the way we practice medicine. I think there's a request here for me to revisit the signs and symptoms of good gut health. And I think I explained that the features of good gut health will be regular bowel movements, so that constipation or diarrhea will be indicators that there may be problem with the gut health. Excessive bloating is another, or abdominal cramps will be another. Then recurrent infections as a result of poor immunity will be another. And looking at the gut-brain axis, things like mood swings, stress, poor cognition, those may also be features that the gut is unhealthy. And the ways in which we correct that will be ensuring that we eat well, we exercise, and we also do not abuse antibiotics and other things that can cause damage to our health. Thank you. I think there's a question here about piles because, as a colorectal surgeon, that's close to my heart. It says, kindly revisit the real definition of pile and how to treat it. Well, the pile or hemorrhoids are conditions that affect, another story, another joke. My old professor used to say that there are two groups of people, those with piles and liars. So we all need to decide which one we are on this platform. And that's because the hemorrhoids. So we have something called the anal cushions. The anal cushions, they surround the anal canal. Anal canal is where we pass stool through. Basic physics. Whatever is solid or semi-solid passing through a tube, to reduce friction, there has to be lubrication. So those anal cushions, what they do is provide lubrication. And because of our lifestyle, chronic constipation, excessive straining when we go to pass stool, and not drinking enough water, going to the toilet to move your bowels and reading the complete works of Shakespeare in the toilet, right? Or using WhatsApp messages, doing all sorts of things, spending, really, you should, more than 5 minutes, then you have overstayed your, visit to the toilet. So all of those things will cause congestion of those anal cushions. When those anal cushions get congested, they are made of blood vessels. So they swell up and they reduce their ability to provide lubrication. So when one is now passing stool, there's a reduction of the friction. It breaches the lining of those anal cushions, causing bleeding. Excessive straining loosens the ligaments that hold those anal cushions inside, so they come out. So at times people will have, when they pass stools, the hemorrhoids come out, they drop out. So all of those things require lifestyle change. Most of them would require investigation, and the investigation of choice will be a colonoscopy. A colonoscopy is an examination that is done to examine the large bowel to make sure there is nothing more serious than these hemorrhoids. It's a highly skilled procedure. At Sapphire Surgical Center, 7B Ojuolobu, we provide colonoscopy services, and we also have a whole range of ways in which we can treat hemorrhoids, because it's one of the commonest things we see at Sapphire Surgical Center. And when the patients come to us, we need to take a good history. We need to find out what their lifestyle is. And then there's a range of treatment from non-operative so diet will be the first thing we do. Then there are non-operative ways in which we can treat the hemorrhoids. up to the ones that are quite severe. I mean, people who cannot sit down, they'll be sitting with one side of the bottom because they cannot sit down properly because of the hemorrhoids. Again, those are people we can really, really sort out. So hemorrhoids is a problem. Does sugar cause bile? Well, it's people swear by the fact that when they drink Coke or they have sugar, their piles become more troublesome. Often what happens is that those people would not have been taking sufficient fiber. So they will usually have a tendency to constipation. They will usually be straining, and that was what then causes their hemorrhoids. Thank you.
Adeze has a question for you, sir, and then I have one more question after she's gone with her question. Adeze?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Coker. Thank you so much, a lot so far. So I'm going to be asking this question about what are the healthy tips to manage constant burping after eating?
Well, the most important healthy tip is don't talk when you're eating. You're laughing. It's true. It's true. Because you see, when one is talking and eating, one is swallowing air. Do you understand? So, and it's that burping is just air being passed through the other way. The air is meant to pass through the colon in the form of flatus or what we call gas. But if, for example, the stomach gets filled up and that valve, remember that gatekeeper, I keep talking about this important gatekeeper. If that gatekeeper gets weak and the stomach is full, then that applies pressure, loses the gatekeeper, so the air escapes, and that's how people burp. So you shouldn't talk when you eat. You shouldn't eat fast. Don't rush your food, because again, that's another way of swallowing air. And the third thing is that if you want to drink anything, you open it and it does shh, then again, you shouldn't be having that. So lifestyle changes will help to reduce, but for some people, in spite of all of those, they still get excessive gas. Those people, I would recommend for them to take peppermint. And they could either have peppermint as in treble, or they can have peppermint tea. That will help to absorb some of the gas, but it's simple, really. Don't talk when you eat, don't eat too fast, and avoid fizzy drinks. Thank you.
All right, so we have, I think, one more question. It may be two. Somebody's asked about prebiotics and probiotics, and they're asking what's the difference between both, and if you could name food categories in prebiotics and probiotics.
That's not one of my strong points, because there are too many of the problem is that there are too many of them. But it's better to speak to a nutritionist to try and find out, because you see, I don't want to be recommending anything here when a proper assessment has not been done. And then it's Dr. Coker says. So, there needs to be proper assessment to find out what the problem is, because there are quite a whole range of probiotics and other prebiotics that are available out in the market. Some of them, one needs to read the label to find out what the indications are, so that they can then be sure of what to take.
Maybe I should then throw this question to Adeze, because she's a nutritionist and a wellness coach. So Adeze, is that a question you can answer for us?
Yes, so when we talk about the prebiotics and probiotics, there are a lot of them in Nigeria that, people can take advantage of. So most times when patients come to me and they say, oh, I want to go take a probiotic, they want to take like a supplement. I don't advise supplements. I advise natural food sources. So the natural food sources are around us. Things like your uru that you use in making your soups is a very rich probiotic that is very good for your gut health. And the Yorubas, they have the uru. The Igbos, they also eat it. Some people call it dawa dawa. You can also get that. You can add it to your food. Then there's this food addition that women add add to the food that we add into our food in the East, okay? So we call it the ogiri, okay? Ogiri is also a very good probiotic that is very, very good for your health because it's fermented. Then your your pap is fermented, okay? Is a very, very good, rich probiotic that is very good for your gut health. Then we also have our Ijebu Gari. The Ijebu Gari that you look at and you say, oh, this Ijebu Gari is not really good for you and stuff like that. Please, it is a very, very good probiotic. It is, and the more you ferment it, the higher the probiotic content in it, and it helps your gut. And it's also very high in fiber. So these are the common probiotic foods that you can actually incorporate into your diet that are around you. So you don't necessarily need to go and get the supplements, okay? Then if you can also get your cabbage and you ferment it, there's something called the sauerkraut. You can use those ones too. So these are common ones around you that you can use to nourish your gut health. It's more like you using the prebiotics and the probiotics. It's more like you using it to nourish the good bacteria that are helping your gut health to be able to carry out the metabolic operations and digestive operations in your body. So that's basically that about the prebiotics and the probiotics.
So
What's the
can I
difference?
just
Sorry,
so
sir. Sorry,
the
go ahead, sir, and then she can answer
yeah
what the difference is first.
Okay.
okay, no, but the with prebiotics by definition are things that feed the gut microbes.
Yeah.
So they are not really so they will be the things she's talked about, the fermented products that she's talked about. Those are the prebiotics, and they are better, they are natural products. And ogi, iru, other things like the fermented milk that the Hausas have, fura something, and then
Fura
wara also.
Fura and Nunu.
Yeah. Yes, wara, for example. So, even palm wine, those
Yes.
are fermented products that contain those. So those are the prebiotics. But probiotics are now the organisms that people can take, like the lactobacillus and a whole host of others. But there are so many of them. And I think it's better if one opts for the natural products rather than going for the probiotics, because the natural products are usually a lot cheaper and more effective than the probiotics that will have been heavily marketed. So, Adeze, please go ahead.
Okay, and so most of the time the prebiotics are so they are the ones that actually create room for the probiotics to work in our body. Okay, so this is why I always recommend for you to go for the natural food sources, because when you go for the natural food sources, those organisms are already life in them. For instance, your Greek yogurts, okay, your Greek yogurt already contains that lactobacillus because that's what is used to ferment it. So by the time you ingest it into your body, it awakens, like it makes way for the probiotics in your body to be able to be activated and to work for your gut health. Have I answered your question?
You have answered it for me. I hope you have answered it for them. All right. I think we have one. So somebody is also asking that they say that Ijebu Gari is bad for your eyes, but I guess this would be in terms of moderation. So how do they balance gut health? Dr. Coker, you're laughing. And there's hold on, let me see
yes.
Okay, laughing.
No, because it's
hold on, please.
Yes. No, it's because when we were in medical school, one of the things we learned was there's something called tropical ataxic neuropathy, which was written up by Professor Oshuntokun at the time, the world famous Professor Oshuntokun, and it had to do with the cyanide that was in the gari that people were soaking at the time, and that affected their brains. So it's not just blindness, it can affect the brains also. But I think that was sort of in the 60s and 70s. I'm not sure that practice is still on now. So I don't want the Jebu Gari lobby to come after me to say that I'm destroying their trade. So I don't know what the current trade is. But excessive consumption can actually cause neurological problems. Adeze.
Adeze, please answer while they go too.
So let me throw more light on that. Thank you very much Dr. I didn't even know about the neurological aspect of it. So part I know is the cyanide, okay. But then, so that is why most of the time in the eastern part of Nigeria, they add palm oil to be able to bring down the level of the cyanide content in the cassava. So that's why it is preferable for you to have the yellow gari compared to sour Ijebu gari. We're not saying the Ijebu gari is bad or the white gari is bad, but the cyanide content in the Ijebu gari, or those ones that they don't have the palm oil added to them, is higher. Okay, so the palm oil kind of brings down the level of the cyanide content. That's why they tend to say that the yellow gari is much healthier than Ijebu gari.
I won't agree with you on that one, but let's go on because it's fermented. Man, but then, I'm just an eater. I'm not a... Please, can we have poll 2 so that we keep the time as we have promised? We're going to launch another poll that would like you to participate in. It's coming up right about now. Yes. So fun fact poll. Which one is better for gut health? Probiotic-rich foods like yogurt, coffee, fermented foods, prebiotic-rich foods like bananas, onions, and beans. Both are equally important. Please make your choices. They say it's multiple choice. See, they are being very fair on this, eh? Multiple choice, and then as soon as possible, because like play, we have done an hour and 10 minutes. It's funny how time flies when you're having fun. I trust that the participants have gained a few things. It's more than one or two. And hopefully you will put this into practice in your lives as well. And then there was something that Dr. Coker mentioned about antibiotics. We're very quick to self-medicate. We mostly believe that a trip to the doctor is a waste of time. Please don't go to the doctor when it's too late. Health insurance helps. So if you don't have a health insurance plan, please get one. And then that helps you. So the results are in for the fun fact poll. Which one is better for gut health? Probiotic-rich foods like yogurt, coffee, fermented foods, we have 27% on that. Prebiotic-rich foods like bananas, onions, and beans, we have 15% on that. Both are equally important. We have 81% on that. Dr. Coker, can you speak to that very briefly, and then Adeze as well after Dr. Coker?
No, I think the audience are right. We need to have both in moderation. It's not that one is better than the other; they complement each other. So, which is why we have a very knowledgeable audience. Thank you.
All right, Adeze.
Okay, I think the result is actually very, very okay. So, but in all things, we'll still say that even healthy food to be consumed in moderation. So, because when you consume healthy things in excess, you have like a vast health. So that's
Yes.
it. Just keep moderate.
Yes, the other point I need to make is that a lot of people talk about dieting, but actually the food that we have in Nigeria is really good. It's excellent. There's a lot of fiber, a lot of natural products. What finishes us is portion control. That's our biggest problem. So if we can eat in moderation, then the food we have is very good. But that portion, that I could never forget the Chinua Achebe story about the mound of pounded yam. That the other person they couldn't see the man on the other side of it. You can imagine how much pounded yam will have been eaten that day. So it's portion control that is our biggest problem. And if we can ensure that we measure what we eat and we know our limitations, then we will all be fine. Our parents and our grandparents were fine. It's just in our generation. And then on top of that, we collided with all sorts of fast food. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Coker. It truly has been a very, very enriching, just over an hour. And Adeze, thank you as well. I'm going to hand over to Ayodeji now so that he can close us out.
Thank you very much. I honestly, and I wish that we could have this for longer actually, but it's not in our nature to abuse time and take advantage of people's time. But I get a sense that we will come back to this. I I get a sense that people who want to ask more questions would find a forum to take some more time of Dr. Coker's time. Dr. Coker's time is very expensive. And Yemi and...
But Dr. Coker is not charging for this, so don't let them go away with the impression that expensive Dr. Coker.
And honestly, that's why I am here to thank you, Dr. Coker, and Yemi and Adaise. These ordinarily are people who would have, spent time doing other things, but they have come to share time with us free of charge, just to educate us. And I really thank you on behalf of Better Life and on behalf of the participants. But one word, Dr. Coker, from you, one word, and possibly Adaise, and even Yemi, garlic. What do you think?
I love it. It's in everything except my smoothies. There's nothing I cook that doesn't have garlic. Garlic, onions, ginger, those three.
Okay.
And iru. In fact, I put iru in almost everything as well.
Okay, Adaise.
Okay, so for garlic, I tell people that garlic is like a superpower kind of herb, or let me call it a spice that you can add to your cooking, especially with the allicin in the garlic. That is like, it works for a lot of things, but it's just that most people, they don't like the smell, the old smell that comes with garlic. That's the only thing. But garlic is a super power herb that people should incorporate into their food. It works for your gut health. It's very important for your immune system. It even helps people that have high blood pressure issues. There's a lot that garlic does. It's a natural antibiotic. Yes.
Okay. DJC, garlic.
Well, it's like I said, our food is good, and garlic contains a lot of micronutrients, things like vitamin C, vitamin B, magnesium, selenium. All of those things are in garlic, rich in garlic. And it's also low in calories, so it's not a heavy stuff to take. And more importantly, for your cardiovascular health, it mops up the bad cholesterol in us. So anytime, yes, the problem is the smell. And if one can overlook the smell, then you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coker. Much appreciation to you. Adaise, thank you for your time. Yemi, Olivia, we really appreciate your time with us. I just want to remind us that we're having, Dr. Coker talked about physical activity. We're having Lekki Move It. That comes up on the 1st of October. So for those who live in the Lekki community, join us for Lekki Move It. We'll start sending materials out on that. Register, join us. It's going to be about maximum 8-kilometer walk within the Lekki community. The other thing is that we're going to launch a campaign on the 10 habits for a better life. Look out in our social spaces and have fun with us. Thank you very much for your time, and see you at the next Better Life Convos. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.